Webcam microphone up close. Webcam microphone up close.
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was a...
See, but I have the files. You know, I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, how can that be possible? You know, pistols and fondle slab of choice. I don't know when that was. It doesn't really matter. Internet, professional wrestlers, and not Jesse Ventura style. It doesn't matter where the information comes from as long as it's real. It doesn't. It's hard to get real information. Because seriously, they don't want you to have these two together whenever I try to prove out. You know, it's not. If you expect your government to tell you the truth, you're going to sadly disappoint another one of these things.
Dear Lord, what a dirty old man, huh?
Really? You can't be serious. Is this really how you want things to be? Come on. More hooker, eruptions? Eruptions, whatever.
Like Dave Powers kind of...
Really?
Allegedly broadcast live from Pima Region 2, within the borders of the formerly united and currently occupied states of America. We bring you the
Ochelli Effect. I damn sure know I'm an original.
We have all these situations. I'd love to know why it takes 50 years, for a 19-year-old girl to eventually get up to gumption to put these things out.
And that is certainly that. We are live on UCY.TV radio. And tonight, of course, we're going to go back into our series with the Liberty Beacon Project and Roger Landry. There we go, tripping over my tongue. That's one. Always 3 of those per show, I guarantee you. But pretty soon we're going to be joined by Roger Landry. And hopefully there'll be another guest coming up. But you've heard Landry on my show before. Earlier today, I did a few other things. I spent a little time with Maria Heller on her show, The Mouth That Roars, and did about an hour with her, even though I made her run over her commercial break because I have no regard for that kind of stuff and just seem to be able to maintain conversations longer than they should, be naturally maintained. Anyway, hopefully Roger Landry will join me very, very shortly here. I'm trying to connect him in to the broadcast, and we'll see where we're at.
Hello.
Oh, there he is. Hey, Roger, how you doing today?
You want the standard answer? Busy in the one-legged man in a butt-kicking contest.
Oh, listen, on the Ochelli Effect, we don't want the standard answer. That would not suit me anyway. And, of course, I don't think that would suit you very well either.
Not really.
It's just because, look, if we were all about the standard, why would we bother discussing this stuff? Why would we bother talking about, the realities around us that are, awfully, awfully dark, right, Roger?
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, we're probably standing, other than, I would say, 2 other points in our history, which would be the Revolution and the Civil War, we're probably about the darkest point in American history.
I absolutely agree with you because, each of those things often missed by the, let's just say the new media people that are out there. It's that type of bloodletting. It's that type of, spontaneous sort of real confrontation between men over ideas that often is exactly that, the famous quote about how the roots of a liberty tree are often, fed by the blood of patriots and tyrants. And, during both of those periods, you could say that we experienced that type of, upheaval in our brief, in our very short, this nation's history is very short, comparatively speaking. Even as an empire, we've had kind of a short run. So, but look, all of that philosophical and historical stuff aside, of course, I wanted to bring you on to look into again about the situation in Colorado, but I know it hasn't really moved all that far forward because it is a process, and we are tracing it from the beginning. And I wanted to make that point to everybody and to you as well, that, you know, no matter what you think about my support or lack of support for it or whatever else, here's the thing. I'm showing you people that this is being done from square one. And, you know, it's been pointed out to me that there are some other places that sort of, you know, are similar, but they're not backed by the same people. They have had their issues. And, you know, there is an educational facility, I think, in Colorado as well, which is similar, but it is not backed by you guys. It is not so well thought out, I think, from square one as what you guys are doing. That's my opinion, mind you, but it just seems to me as though no matter what you think, it is very fascinating to watch this from its inception.
Well, I'll tell you, it's just like anything else, okay? We're going to have our issues. We're going to have our problems. Things are going to go strategically wrong, but it's not so much the process as in how you handle the process. None of us who are going to be involved in this project have done anything like this before. Now, that's not to say that a lot of research hasn't been done. Hasn't been done. But again, this is a learning process for all of us, and it is a bunch of people who have decided that we're tired of talking about what we should be doing, and let's be doing what we should be doing. Now, are we going to have false starts? Yeah. Are we going to have periods where everything's going to come to a stop because something that we hadn't thought of in order to move forward we don't have available at that point, or we hadn't thought? Sure, these things are going to happen. We're all human, and we're all walking down this path for the first time. Now, you're right when you say that a lot of research has been done and a lot of planning has been done, but having never done something of this complexity before, there's always going to be things you didn't think about. And they're going to be things that it's like, oh my God, I didn't realize something this insignificant could cause this much of a ripple in the pond. So again, you know, we're looking at this starting up in a couple of weeks, a little over 2 weeks, and we're still trying to get people to do some volunteering, come down, spend a little bit of time, also to donate to the project. And we're not looking for money. We're looking for you to get a hold of the local vendors and buy a gift card for the project so that you're absolutely positive that whatever you donate goes directly into the project and not into anybody's pocket. We have, Chuck, done a lot of thinking about this. But for me to sit here and tell you that everything is going to go like clockwork and we're not going to have issues and we're not going to have false starts, I believe that I would be seriously remiss being almost 60 years old and knowing that the best plays of mice and men don't always come to fruition as you expect them to.
Precisely. I just wanted you to make that point. That was all there was to it. You know, because I was asked that question and I just wanted to make sure we covered it. But meanwhile, the website is up and running though, and you can go check it out. That web address, Roger, again?
Is www.earthshipsolutions.com. And across the top, you'll find the pages. It's a black bar right underneath the banner. And each page is self-explanatory. Go through them. You'll find the mission statement. You'll find the volunteer page. You'll find, and these are things or implements for you to become active within the project. We're not asking anybody to give a lifetime to this. But if you've got some spare time and this is something that sounds interesting to you, hey, we're going to be growing hemp. Hemp hasn't been grown in this country, well, it has recently, but prior to the last couple of years, hemp hasn't been grown in this country since the Marijuana Act was passed, and I believe that was in 1938. And at the time, it was heralded as the next billion-dollar industry, farming industry. And then you had a company who was going to introduce nylon to the marketplace and had just patented it and decided that hemp was much of a competition, so a little bit of cronyism, a little bit of arm bending, and all of a sudden, anything having to do with cannabis, whether it was hemp or marijuana or anything, was illegal. So we're going to be delving into things that are either brand new, relatively new, or haven't been done in 80 years. So this is very exciting to all of us. And if you want to be a part, whether it's to donate, whether it's to volunteer some time, whether it's to volunteer some expertise, anything you wish to do, you're going to be welcome.
And that's the great thing here. I mean, and there is something very instructive in the way that those who were in power at the time, those who had control over textiles and things like this, really did shut it down. And it was very easy to demonize hemp because of its uses as a recreational drug, sort of. But in reality, to me, it's just one of those things that was a large mistake made over time that I think we're just beginning to correct.
I would push back a little bit, Chuck, and I apologize for interrupting. I don't think it was a mistake at all.
No.
I think and there is cronyism beyond belief in this government today. We all know, due to thousands of world-renowned researchers and scientists, that GMOs are killing us and destroying the biosphere. We all know, due to extensive research that is readily available to anybody, peer-reviewed research, that geoengineering and weather modification, or chemtrails, as you and I might know them, is destroying the biosphere and is going to kill humanity quicker than anything else. But yet we have people in the government who push these things all the time. Why? Because their puppet masters, the people who pull their strings, wish it to be so, regardless of the fallout on you, me, and our children. So I don't think that any of this was an accident. I think it was purely that the powers that be, who could bring the most money to bear, the cronyism at the time, decided that the best way to get their big buck out of polyester would be to eliminate its competition, and hemp was about the biggest competition at the time that new patent for polyester could have had. So what did they do? They applied the appropriate pressure and nixed it. And what did it do? It screwed this country, because the things you can do with hemp are almost immeasurable.
Well, that's true. I meant it from the perspective of the people. I'm not really thinking about it from the perspective of the cronies, from the perspective of the corporation, from the perspective of the large chemical companies that wanted to produce and push their garbage. I'm talking about from our perspective, that we allowed this to go on sort of out of ignorance, because it was very much demonized. I mean, you can famously find the silliness, the propaganda with the reefer madness type stuff and all that garbage. So the thing is that I think that what made us complicit in this was a mistake of the people at the time, because of their ignorance as to the versatility and the realistic uses of the plant. This is what I meant. I didn't mean that it was done by mistake by the government, by the powers that be, by the corporations. Oh, no. They don't make mistakes like that. That's not the type of mistakes they make. The type of mistakes they make is allowing us to know the kind of crap they're pulling. Other than that, they don't make these types of mistakes. Anything that's done on such a large scale like this is absolutely done by design. So I don't disagree with what you're saying. It's just, unfortunately, I think of myself as one of the people, not, I don't think about
I do too. But you're one of the more awake people. Now you have a habit when you go off on your little rants, and I'm not using the word rant in a disparaging fashion, because I have a show I do call the Liberty Beacon Rant, and I like that word, because basically what it says is you're putting forth a word with passion. You just made a very, very good point that is the reason for a lot of the things that ail we the people today. A lot. Okay? I constantly hear railing and ranting against the government, against congressmen, whether it be representatives or senators, against presidents, against high-placed individuals within the administration, constantly hear ranting about you did this or they did this or they did this. We the people forget something. We the people do not blame or do not place where a very large portion of it belongs. And you brought this point up so eloquently that I really think it needs to be expounded on. And that is, we people are responsible for a majority of what we suffer. Because we have failed to hold our elected representatives' feet to the fire. We have failed to hold them responsible. We have failed to hold them accountable. I can give you, for instances, one right after the other, right after the other. Walk down any busy street. This is a litmus test. Walk down any busy street. Tap 1 out of 10 people that run across on the shoulder, and ask them about a bill that affected either their district or their state within the last, say, 2 weeks to 30 days. And ask them if they know how their senator or their representatives voted on this bill. I will guarantee you, and the number's probably much higher, so I'm going to give the people credit here, that 9 out of 10 will not even have a clue on what you're talking about. Now, in a republic, if we the people, who are the top of the totem pole, because the totem pole by the Constitution is the sovereign individual, the sovereign state, and last but not least, well, actually, yes, least, is the federal government, who is the servant to the sovereign states and the sovereign individual, who is number one. So if we, the people, who sit on the top of the totem pole, don't care enough to see or to investigate how our duly elected representatives, let's go back to the word representative, meaning they are there to speak for you and I and not for themselves or not for special interests. So if we fail to hold them accountable and keep them on track as to our wishes, what we end up with is things like the Patriot Act, things like NDAA. How many Americans, if they truly understood what the rider in the NDAA bill meant, would ever have voted for it? I would tell you right now, probably less than 10% of this country. But yet, that went through, and then we were informed of it, and most people didn't even listen or didn't understand and really didn't care. There was no large outcry. The only outcry came from people like you and I, Chuck. So when we talk about things like hemp becoming legal, or the NDAA rider becoming law, or any of these things, because 80% of all of the laws written by Congress or the executive orders mandated by our president are outside of their powers as set down by the Constitution. Right. So 80 to 90% of what goes on in this country that we now speak of as tyranny, we have a very, very large responsibility for those actions. A responsibility we never took to heart.
And this is absolutely true, and I'm so glad you made that point, because, you know, even with the Unpatriotic Act, as I like to call it, you know, if people point to me and say, you know, the reason why this was allowed was because, you know, we were in fear and we had, you know, these things that were going on, and I understand that to some degree, but you mean to tell me that because you're afraid you've completely lost your senses? You mean to tell me that you still didn't pay attention? And even if I grant that, to the person who argues this with me, you know what the problem is? That doesn't account for the hundreds and hundreds of laws passed since then that have absolutely curtailed people's freedoms, that have absolutely been the antithesis to what we all understood as our Bill of Rights. These things are being eroded, you know, incrementally in some cases, but in other cases almost wholesale by this legislation that in most cases, and I'm telling you right now, go out on the street, walk into a neighborhood, anything, grocery store, bar, doesn't matter, go in and ask them the details of the most recent 3 bills passed in your very state. the most recent bills that have been passed by the congressmen that they supposedly elected. They will not know anything about them.
That was my point.
Yeah.
You're right.
And it's just, so, there's a point at which you could say that, look, there was a reactive sort of situation where we were sort of trusting our leaders and this and that, but it doesn't explain the total history here, folks. It just doesn't. So it is the ignorance of the public, and I'm guilty of it on some levels because I can't pay attention to all of this. It's so voluminous at this point and been made, so sort of mechanized, this, increase in the paperwork, let's just say, of the structures of the so-called laws at this point. I mean, I challenge anyone to actually understand the fullness of every law that they could possibly be subject to. It is near impossible because of what we have allowed, all of us. And that does include me, that includes you, that includes all of us. Maybe we're catching up now, but the reality is that even as we catch up, we're still not getting into the fullness of the stream, if you will. No matter how hard we try, it seems. But even so, the reason why that creation, that factory of laws is being produced at that rate and everything else is very much on the shoulders of us, the people, who were supposed to hold those people accountable who are doing this. So,
if you are, and I have been on many occasions, okay, a project leader, a project manager, if you are the person in charge, okay, and you have a large group of people who are working that project, and you do not exercise your responsibilities to oversee that project and to make sure that all aspects are running to the fruition of that project, what you will end up with in most cases, and I'm telling you this from personal experience, is chaos. What you will end up with is certain things getting done and other things not getting done, or things not getting done to your expectations or the expectations of, or the goals of the project. So what we have here is exactly the same thing. We are the sovereigns in this country. We are the top of the totem pole. We, the people, run this country, not this government. And due to our negligence, what we have, and any government left to its own accord will eventually accumulate power unto itself and away from the true governors of a republic, which is the people. This is what has happened. But let's harken back to something else you just mentioned, okay? Let's harken back to our rules being, our laws and our rights as set down by the Bill of Rights being incrementally taken away. I would tell you that the situation is a hell of a lot more dire than that at this point. I'll take them, a few of them, one by one, and go over it and tell you exactly why I believe that. When you went to the Bundy Ranch, or when you watched what was going on the Bundy Ranch, what did they do that absolutely proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that our government no longer believes that we have an unalienable freedom of speech right, but instead we have a granted privilege of the freedom of speech set down within their limitations? They set up a corral, a physical corral, and put a sign on it that said free speech zone. If you're going to tell me that I've got to walk into that corral, which is a limitation you're setting on me, in order to speak freely, then I no longer have the right to speak freely. You have granted me that right as long as I do it within the boundaries you've set up. So there's one down, okay? The right to reasonable privacy. Let's just say.
Let me interrupt you, Roger, because you know what? One thing is missed right there with that corralling and those free speech zones, which it wasn't the first time we saw it at the Bundy Ranch. We saw this also during the time when we attempted to, because I know I participated in this, attempting to protest our incursion into Iraq, okay? Right. They did the very same thing to us in Washington, D.C., where we were not allowed to be anywhere near where public officials were making public appearances, and they set up the same thing in a parking lot about half the city away, okay? So the very same thing happened. Now, here's another point to that, though. not only are we supposed to have our freedom of speech, which is being curtailed here, but, there's another little clause in there that says something about the freedom of assembly. Okay?
That's not a clause. That's a bill.
I understand.
That's an actual law.
I'm minimizing it here, but you know what I'm talking about. So where is our freedom of assembly when we're being corralled into an area which has now been designated by whom? Well, this is not freedom of assembly, is it? This is not freedom of speech.
It goes even further than that, Chuck, because now if you demonstrate on what's considered to be government property, which the government property is owned by who? It's owned by we the people. It belongs to us.
That's the way it's supposed to be. Yeah.
But if you demonstrate on government property or you protest anybody with Secret Service accompaniment, it's punishable by up to 10 years in prison.
So that's a recent addition, in fact, that they, I forget exactly how that became.
I believe it's HR 374.
That sounds right. Sure. That sounds right. If not, I know you're very close. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there you go. So what you're telling me is, I'm going to tell you where you can assemble. Tell you when you can talk. I'm going to tell you, and I can go right down the line. So we had bequeathed to us unalienable rights, which meant these are rights granted to us by our Creator that no man or government may usurp. Well, basically what our government has done is redefine them with limitations. So now they are no longer unalienable rights. They are privileges granted by our government as long as we meet certain expectations and guidelines they set down for us. These are no longer rights. They can't even be defined as unalienable rights. They can only be defined as granted privileges by a tyrannical government. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. There's an additional point here, though. Just one more, though, Roger, and I'm sorry to add on.
Go ahead.
During those times when you were in those free speech zones, press coverage was also curtailed.
Yep.
Now, I don't know, maybe it's just because it's been so long since I did a deep study on the Constitution, but I could have swore there was a part in there about the freedom of the press as well. Well, is the press free if they're not allowed to cover the limited speech that I'm allowed to have in the limited area that I'm allowed to be in? It seems as though not a single one of those rights is anymore a right. It is exactly, like you said, a privilege which they can either grant or take away.
Or define.
And define. But by definition they can do that. Because by redefining it, it can be exactly seized. So therefore, how else do you describe this other than they are no longer your rights?
Well, the freedom of press, a free press is something that it's a little bit more involved, simply because.
Well, that's a joke also. That's a joke also, Roger. But I'm just saying, listen.
No, I agree with you, Chuck.
I'm trying to play the devil's advocate here as if the press was still free.
The press is free. It is, because you and I are doing a show right now where we're not worried about a sponsor who's saying, if you want my money, this is what you can and can't say. So there is freedom of the press, because according to a Supreme Court ruling not too long ago, we are also considered press. We are. And the Supreme Court, to my absolute amazement, upheld the fact that we are the press as much as the mainstream media is. So, but what you need to understand is that so many people have been propagandized into the belief that if it's the truth, it's going to come from Fox News. If it's the truth, it's going to come from CNN. If it's the truth, it's going to come from ABC, CBS, NBC, or any of their affiliates, okay? If it's the truth, it's going to come from the New York Times. If it's the truth, it's going to come from the Chicago Tribune. This is where the problem lies, because what you have here is an entire industry which is owned by a very few elites who use this as probably the most effective propaganda mechanism ever developed in the history of this planet. Now, it's all done subliminally. It's all done through little baby steps here and there. But if you tell a lie often enough, it becomes the truth. When I was young, I remember, and I can even cite you names and cases, I remember investigative reporters in the 50s and the 60s, and even in the 70s. Nowadays, these people would not dare step out the line and do their own research. They take their script and they read it. And who writes the script? Well, the script is written by the government. Okay, who runs the government? That would be the people who own the government. And when people hear me say who own the government, they push back immediately. I need to remind you of the Act of 1871, whereby this country was turned from a republic into a corporation. It is wholly owned. The Federal Reserve is wholly owned, so they own our government, literally, factually, own our government, own our monetary system, and they write the script that 94% of the owned mainstream media reads every night.
This is just something that I can't even begin to argue with. Again, to my amazement, though, I got to tell you that there are still people that believe, because they've sort of constructed some, controlled opposition. Okay, they turned around and they gave us guys like like Bill O'Reilly. People love that guy, right? He, at one point when he was on a tabloid show, seemed to be an investigative journalist, right? Well, of course, as soon as he started working for Rupert Murdoch on a constant basis and got himself his, extra financing and everything else, all of that sort of investigation, challenging the system in any way, shape, or form. I mean, an easy study on that is his flip-flop on the Kennedy assassination, that's for sure. And you can find that stuff if you go on YouTube yourself. You can go look at it, and you can see a younger Bill O'Reilly, not a young-looking Bill O'Reilly, because in my opinion, he never did look young, but the odd part is you can watch him actually challenging all about, the Kennedy assassination, discussing how the House Select Committee found malfeasance within our own government and this and that, and making some pretty interesting statements. Now, if you fast forward to only a few years ago, he has another Oswald Did It and Believe the Official Lie book that he puts out because he's got, his Killed People series on, killing Jesus, killing Lincoln, killing Kennedy, all these things, and he's well propped up by the large corporations. And if you tell me that he's doing anything other than reading a script, or that any of these thoughts are his own, look, again, I have plenty of very good, beachside property to sell you, somewhere near Arizona. Don't worry about a map, I'll show you. Okay?
I can tell you the same things about Sean Hannity. I can tell you the same things about Glenn Beck. I can tell you. But, again, you brought up a real good point, all right? There are so many different reasons floating around out there about why Kennedy was assassinated. I can tell you, I can give you the exact reason why he was assassinated, and I can tell you that the importance of this reason trumps anything anybody else has ever told you. And this is something very few people, if you ask them, why was Kennedy assassinated? Very few people even know about, or very few people can talk to. I just got done telling you, and I know you're aware of this, Chuck, that the United States is a corporation. It is owned by private banks and private individuals. I also told you that the Federal Reserve is not federal. It is owned by private banks and private individuals. What most people aren't aware of is that exactly 1 week after Kennedy was assassinated, there was an event that was due to take place that these owners of the United States and the Federal Reserve absolutely could not allow to happen. Kennedy had already printed up many, many billions of dollars of American greenbacks. Kennedy was about to pull the United States of America, Google this, people, off the Federal Reserve System, he would have saved this country. He would have eliminated the American crushing debt load. He was going to pull us off the Federal Reserve System and issue American greenbacks based on all of the reserves of all of the gold and the iron ore and the natural gas, all of the resources this country has, and we're a very resource-rich country. He was about to pull us off the Federal Reserve System. That's why Kennedy was assassinated, because it could not happen.
All right. Now, Roger, I'm going to tell you something here, and here's where I've spent a lot of time on something, and I want you to understand that there's a minor misdirection in what you're saying, okay? And I don't just turn to my own research. I can point you to others on it. I want you to really examine it, though, because you'll understand what I'm saying if you do. The whole idea about those U.S. notes and the use of the silver certificate at that time is a little bit of a fallacy, because people base it on that executive order number 11110. Okay, which was actually an augmentation of an earlier executive order. In reality, when you take a look at the language in the order and what it actually did, it actually turned away a presidential power which Kennedy had to control the issuance of those certificates, and he turned it over to his Secretary of Treasury. Okay? And a lot of people state that those notes were not produced after Kennedy's death. It's not true. They were produced up until 1971. Okay, but also people think that he was the one who began that trend. I even proved by plucking them out of the money supply myself that these things existed since the 1930s. Okay, the thing is this. There was a small amount of the U.S. notes which were allowed to be produced, and it was a presidential privilege. It was an executive branch privilege which was granted to the president to be able to control these based on the amount of silver that was supposed to be on deposit in our banks. That is not where he was battling the Federal Reserve. There is a whole other issue that was going on that we still don't have all the declassified papers on, though, Roger, that goes a whole lot deeper. What was going to happen here is that he was seeking to have the entire system reshaped. He wanted the disconnect from the system where we were going to have the loans. Those silver certificates are a bit of a distraction. And you're aware of G. Edward Griffin, right?
Yes.
If you take a look at an article that he wrote in 2000, okay, you'll find something that he calls the Kennedy myth about the executive order number 1110. Okay, and I don't just rely on G. Edward Griffin's expertise on this, because I'm telling you a couple of things that he didn't mention in that article for certain. However, if you look at the displacement of that power and the relativity to the change in what we call the Silver Purchase Act at that time, you'll find that that there was a whole lot more going on there. That particular little action was nothing compared to what Kennedy was going to do. He wanted to have Wall Street held more accountable. He wanted to have the Federal Reserve disconnected from the exact system by which the issuance was going on. It had nothing to do with the silver, though. The silver was no longer in the banks, and this is why he turned it back over to C. Douglas Dillon. Okay? And I really want you to look at that, because I'm telling you it'll change your perspective on this a little bit, but it goes a whole lot deeper than that.
Oh, I'm not disagreeing with you, and I was, again, just basically touching the surface. Otherwise, this whole show would have been involved with that one subject. But, yes, no, I agree with a lot of what you said. A few things that you brought up for me, I will do a little bit of additional research on, because I wasn't aware of them. But nothing you said is basically disrails what I said. It's just that you defined it a whole hell of a lot better. Kennedy was going to do some things that would absolutely have rocked the elite. And in doing so, he upset an apple cart. They were not good. They basically were not going to let it happen.
Right.
And I honestly believe that was the trigger for his death.
Oh yeah, cooperation instead of confrontation, eliminating.
And LBJ was very involved in this.
Well, you know, I'll tell you this.
Vice president.
I'll tell you this much: he fell right into line right after the shots were fired because days before Kennedy's death, National Security Action Memorandum 263 was signed, which would have withdrawn the first 1,000 troops from Vietnam by the end of the year, and all U.S. personnel by the end of 1965. Before Kennedy's body was in the ground, Johnson put his signature on National Security Action Memorandum 273. 273 absolutely reversed all of that. And in that document really lays the absolute genesis of what became the Vietnam conflict over the next 10 years plus. So,
I know.
That reversal alone is enough to tell you what the difference was between the two. I don't believe he was the mastermind behind it, but I'm very sure somebody tapped him on the shoulder and said, listen, you're going to be president. You ready to do what you're told? I'm pretty sure that happened.
LBJ was a good old boy, but I don't give him the cognitive ability that a lot of people give him credit for. I really don't. I think LBJ was a very, very good puppet, and he was very adept at playing the role. He was a good frontman. He was a mouthpiece, and that's all he was.
Well, and he was a good networking guy. I mean, Senate Majority Leader. He had no problem making sure that bribes were transferred fully in cash and everything else. I give you a good example. If you listen to the radio broadcasts from that morning when Kennedy was making his trip from Fort Worth to Dallas, you can hear all about the scandals with Bobby Baker and cotton allotments and all these other sort of agricultural farming scandals, and they were paying people not to grow cotton on land that was underwater and all kinds of fun stuff. And he was doing that as the Senate Majority Leader. He was doing that as the Vice President of the United States. So, believe me, I'm not saying that this guy was innocent in any way, shape, or form. But just like said, no. I don't want to give him the cognitive credit to being the mastermind or the guy who pulled the strings here. If anything, he was just a more noticeable and more public puppet. And, and was definitely useful as the middleman to get things done. I mean, the military people, they wanted to be able to build helicopters. They went through him. The TFX fighter thing that happened in Texas beforehand. All of this stuff that went on General Dynamics, which we still see coming up in the news today. You had Brown and Root Construction, which later on, if you follow the trail, turns around and morphs into something that we call today Halliburton. Or actually, wait, did they change their name again? I'm not sure. Just like Blackwater and all these other companies, once they take enough, trashing, they seem to reincorporate themselves and morph into something else. But the roots are still the same, the controllers are still the same, and I'll tell you what really remains the same, it is the game. So, yeah, this is definitely instructive, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get us off on this little, but
this is a tangent that more people need to understand. This is a tangent because anybody who ripples the system, there are those out there who believe, and you constantly hear the phrase, the President of the United States is the most powerful individual on the planet. That is so much poppycock, it's ridiculous. This is one way to prove that, okay? You step out of line. When they pull the string for your arm and your arm doesn't jerk, well, what do you do with a puppet that's broken? What do you do when you worn a puppet out? You get rid of it and you get a new puppet. Okay, this is exactly what happened to Kennedy. The President of the United States is not, by far, the most powerful individual on this planet. The President of the United States is the main representative of the most powerful people on this planet. He is the head puppet, the puppet in chief, if you wish me to put it that way.
I like that one, the puppet in chief. I like that. That makes sense. And you know what? You don't even need to go to the Barack Obamas of the world, not at all. If you just go from after they, pretty much drained the hell out of LBJ, who You had Nixon who followed him, and the second, I do mean the very second that he decided to challenge the intelligence industrial military complex in the slightest way. You know, he was playing along when it came to bombing Cambodia and continuing the genocide in Vietnam, and I call it a genocide. A lot of people don't. I don't care. That's what I believe it is. You know, he was carrying all that through, but the second that he stepped out of line with the intelligence community, a bunch of CIA operatives that he happened to hire to plug the leaks in his White House bungled a stupid third-rate burglary that, you know, seemed to have been done just about on purpose. And, you know, if you want to go check that out, some of the interesting documentation on that, there's a book called Secret Agenda that you can check out. But I'm telling you now, every time one of these guys steps out of line, they couldn't put another bullet into another president because that would have been a little too obvious only a few years later, you know? So what did they do? They got rid of him that way. And what do we end up with? The Ford administration. Warren Commissioner Gerald Ford. Oh boy, and you know, we could begin and we could talk about that, but you know what? Let's just really quickly draw a line. Where is it that we see Rumsfeld and Cheney first come into any sort of prominent positions? During the Ford administration. So, do we know what kind of guys these are? I think so, Roger.
I so agree with everything you've just said, and you put it very eloquently, but let's harken back to the very first president who admitted in an open statement that has been repeated millions of times by liberty-minded individuals across the internet for years. Okay, I'm talking back to the early 1930s when a quote was made by Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the longest-running president in the history of the United States. They actually made a law that a president can't serve more than 2 terms because they were afraid that Roosevelt was acquiring and accumulating dictatorial powers. Right. He had been around that long. But he made a comment that puts all of this into perspective when he stated, presidents are not elected, they're selected. Now, this comes straight from the horse's mouth. And he said this for a reason, okay? He said this because his power had not started to accumulate at that point. And there were those who were absolutely amazed that somebody who had a physical deficiency and somebody who had as much influence with large business as he did was ever elected president. And he was asked why. And basically his answer was, and this is an exact quote, the presidents are selected, not elected. Okay. You can't get more real than that. You can't.
No, absolutely not. And I am often saying that, yeah, they're selected, not elected. Election is a misnomer at this point because, you know, election implies that we had a choice. You know, you can elect to do something or not to do it. No, these guys are selected.
When you say that election is, you know, we really don't have the choice, that elections really are an exercise in futility at this point, it's how it's accomplished, because there are several mechanisms. The first mechanism is propaganda, okay? Because running up to all the way up to the first primary, they already know which candidate's going to be elected. And what you have there after that is just a massive amount of propaganda and entertainment. And so what you've got is propagandizing, but you also have voter fraud, or not voter fraud, because it's not the voters who are doing it, it's voting fraud. And you also have a mechanism that I tell people this and they are absolutely shocked. In any presidential election, 60 to 65% of all of the votes that are cast for a presidential candidate in this country are counted in Spain by a company that is owned by George Soros. Well, let's talk about elite here, okay? George Soros owns the company that counts more than half, a large majority of all votes that are cast for a presidential candidate outside of the United States. All right. Tell me which part of this you don't think stinks to high heavens.
Yeah,
so there are multiple mechanisms for the stealing of an election, but it's been a long time since a major U.S. election was truly in the hands of we the people and our vote.
No, absolutely. I mean, and that's really instructive, and I think people don't understand that well enough. That, in reality, this is almost like saying, you have a block association, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to elect a leader among the block association. So everybody that lives in the neighborhood will have a vote. Okay, fine. You drop the votes into a box, and then you fly them to the other side of the planet, let's just say. And they're going to count them over there, and they're going to come back and tell us how many votes were counted. Would you really want to do that? No? But,
no.
This is literally, I mean, I'm paring it down quite a bit here, but, I mean, it's just that silly. I mean, how can you even rely upon those results? The beginning of the problem, of course, is the primary and all that stuff and the propaganda and how they, very much have kept it down to these two so-called parties and all that. I mean, that's another part of the process. But all of it sort of linked together and interacting with each part causes the same effect, which is that you are not really selecting your own people. You're not electing anybody. They're being selected, but not by you.
Yes. And there are people who would take the fault all the way back to the Electoral College. But then that's another whole show.
Yeah, that's true. That is true, and I don't want to take up all your time with that because I know you could sit and break that down for us. But it is instructive enough, though. But I mean, by all means, Roger, if you want, go ahead.
No, not on this show because you've got another guest coming in. I believe she'll be standing by on Skype, and that is the executive director of the Liberty Beacon Project, Lucille.
Right.
And she should be on Skype within the next few minutes.
Should be. I'm taking a look now to see where she is, actually.
Well, she just asked me when she should jump on, and I said, onto Skype, and I said, now.
Oh, okay, great. Let me see if I can.
So she'll be popping up on your scope there within the next minute or two.
All right, great. Because I haven't had Lucille on yet. And
oh, no. And this is a very, very intelligent lady. She's not what, she doesn't speak as freely or as openly or as easily as you and I would because we do this a lot. But, she has a lot to say. And I've got to tell you, if it wasn't for the backing that I get from Lucille, I am the founder of this project, but Lucille is the executive director. So a lot of what we accomplish is through the mechanism she puts in place to allow us to accomplish these things. And she's very, very good at it.
Absolutely, and a very intelligent lady that I've spoken to off the air. Are you with me, Lucille? Okay. She seems to be with us, but I don't hear her yet.
It's still trying to ring into her.
Okay. Well, anyway, the point here is that, she's definitely been involved with coordinating, a lot of the media and stuff like that. Are you there, Lucille?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, there she is. Okay. Oh. Nope, maybe she's gone.
Hello.
Nope.
I lost you for a second.
There you go.
Hi, Lucille. How are you today?
I'm doing very good. How are you?
Chuck and I have just been having a very good conversation, and I'm glad that you're here. I just gave you a huge build-up, and I won't apologize for that.
Oh, I missed it. I'll have to listen later.
All right.
Yeah.
So, I've got about 7 minutes left. Is there anything else you'd like to throw at me, Chuck? because you're one of the very few people who tosses the ball and I don't duck.
I'm so glad that you don't, Roger, because I really appreciate having these conversations with you, because we both wind up really getting to express ourselves and to trade back and forth about some really important things. And usually you always bring up things for me that get me thinking even more about the things that I do care about and about what it is I'm trying to do on this show every time I come on. And I can't thank you enough for all the time you spent with me. And you've actually appeared on my show more than anyone else except myself. So,
well, you keep inviting me, and I'm one of these people who knows for a fact that in order to propagate the Liberty Beacon project, it takes public relations, which means you need to speak about it, which means you need to make people aware of what drives us, what motivates us. We have a lot of people who listen to us, who read the articles on our many websites, who listen to the shows that we put out, and I believe we've got 5 running right now at this point. But it's through the media that the name, the Liberty Beacon Project, gets propagated. So when you offer us, any of us, whether it be Lucille or myself or Joyce, that would be Terry Joyce, a chance to come on and discuss what we believe in and what the Liberty Beacon Project is trying to educate so many people on, it's kind of stupid for us to say no.
Well, again, it's just that it's just great to do. And, it is also instructive because, like you said earlier, the more they repeat lies, the more they get across. Well, you know what?
Yeah.
Repetition is reality is the way I like to look at it. And unfortunately, that's been in the hands of the wrong people for a long time. I don't mind repeating points with you or going back over and back over because, you know what? We may do 5 shows where we made the same point, but if it gets to the right people one time, that might be all it takes to affect the change required. So this is always great. And you know what? We haven't really repeated ourselves very much, actually, over all these broadcasts so far. And we've spent hours together, Roger. So,
well, we at times, and the sad part is that a lot of the topics we're going to discuss overlap into other topics we've already discussed. There is a point of connectivity, and my strong point is, excuse me, I am not an expert at anything. I know enough about everything to have an intelligent conversation about anything. My strong point is points of connectivity. So whether we're talking about subjects like GMOs, vaccines, chemtrails, political tyranny, perpetual warfare, they all have points of connectivity. So when we discuss just about any topic, there is going to be redundancy in some of the information we put out simply because of those points of connectivity. And when you deny or ignore those points of connectivity, then you're doing an injustice, because everything that is evil that is happening us today, to all people today, has its roots in the same point. Okay? Mm-hmm. 95% of what is happening to society today is choreographed, and it's choreographed from the top. And what is the top? These are the people that consider themselves to be the elite. And all of the mechanisms, whether we're talking about health tyranny, whether we're talking about geoengineering, whether we're talking about political tyranny and the loss of our rights, whether we're talking about the fact that we have hostilities going on in 24 countries across the planet, all whether we're talking about an economic collapse of the dollar globally, all of these points are connected at some level. So there's always going to be overlap, Chuck.
Right. That's one of the things that I always try to do as well, is show people, and you know that too, that I say, look, this connects to this and connects to this and connects to this, and this is why it's relevant. Even when I speak about things in history, and when we talk about things that, oh, well, that happened 80 years ago, that happened 100 years ago. Yes, but logically it led from this to this to this to today. And, and this is something that I think is important every time we bring these things up, is that this is why it matters to you, the listener. So I'm always happy to do that, and Roger, once again, I thank you, and I know I'm going to want to have you back on, and, the Colorado Project, or if you just want to rant about something, or I'll tell you what, if something pissed you off, then I'm really happy to have you on, because
don't even get me started there.
Listen, I love it when you're pissed off, because you're pissed off at exactly the same stuff I am. So I'm more than happy to have you on to do that as well. So you're always welcome on any air that I have anything to do with, Roger. I'll tell you that right now.
Well, that's very much appreciated, but I really want to step out because I could just continue to talk, and you have a very, very intelligent person here. Again, Lucille is the executive director of the Liberty Beacon Project, and this lady rails against such things as psychiatric and psychotropic drugs, against things like Common Core. She rails against Agenda 21. So I have a feeling you two are going to have a great conversation. And for once, I'm actually going to bow out after an hour.
Well, thank you again, Roger, and we will speak to you again.
Talk to you later, and you as well, Lucille.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Lucille.
Okay.
So, it takes me a few minutes to get done with Roger usually, and sometimes takes a half hour actually, because we just have so much to say together.
I know.
But he's really an eloquent speaker. But I'm really happy to have you today because I've never had you on.
I know. I'm very excited about this.
Now, he mentioned just now that we of course have the recent situation in California. And I only bring it up because he had just mentioned now that you have a particular interest in psychotropic drugs and things like this. And I got to tell you, so do I.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I would really love to hear what you have to say about that particular topic to start with. But before we do that, do you want to explain what it is that you do as the executive director of the Liberty Beacon? Or?
Oh, sure. Basically, I am in charge of the overall functioning of the site, the media, the radio shows, booking people, getting people to contribute articles. I write them myself now and then, putting up other articles that people post all over the internet. So basically that's what I do. I manage all those things and keep in touch with what's happening.
So you're like the coordinator in a way. I mean, another way to put it would be that you coordinate a lot of the media and a lot of the releases and the overall character kind of the media presentation for the Liberty Beacon then.
Right.
Oh, excellent. What was the most recent article you wrote, by the way?
Oh wow, what did I write recently? Oh, it was about the Vice President's appearance in New York at the Psych Convention. Are you aware of that one? There was a Psych Convention in New York, and there was huge protest, and about 500 people, maybe more, I think it was more than that, came to protest. So I wrote an article on that when I heard about it. I was pretty pissed off. So.
Understandably. A lot of things happen in New York that piss me off, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
The 9/11 memorial whole deal that went on there, that really made me angry. Did you see the stuff about that as well?
Yeah, I did.
I mean, the whole bringing in the 3 caskets with the pouches of unsorted remains and dropping them 70 feet under the ground and not allowing the families to participate in the disposition of these individuals, regardless of how shattered they were and all that. I found it extremely heartrending, actually, regardless of what your viewpoint is on what occurred there. It was certainly a disgusting mass murder, and I don't think anybody would argue with that. But the fact is, I think that it's been handled poorly, and I think that I find the entire, situation with that memorial and everything that's gone on with it pretty revolting, personally. But that's me. I really want to hear more about what you have to say. But, you have anything to say about that 9/11 memorial and all that?
No, I agree. It was pretty bad. I think there's a lot of cover-up. There's tremendous cover-up of what actually happened at 9/11. And that's basically at the bottom of it, I believe.
Yeah, just the continuation of the cover-up, it seems.
Yeah, that's what I think. We don't know exactly what happened, but, I do believe it was not exactly terrorists.
Well, at any rate, you question whether it was 19 guys with box cutters having hijacked airplanes and drilling them into buildings.
Right.
Right. So regardless of what your conclusions may be or may not be, basically we're confronted again with another official story which has, more holes in it than your average wiffle ball. So,
yeah.
This is the problem. So, okay. Just sort of an overview, and I just wanted to get into that. I mean, if there's anything else that you think the audience needs to know about you, I mean, I'd be more than happy to just take a listen to what you want to say about yourself. Or
well, my husband and I work very closely together for the Liberty Beacon. Ever since I've discovered it, I used to work for another newspaper, and it was not up to par as far as I was concerned. And but Roger is. He's just an extremely amazing person. He is totally dedicated to freedom and liberty, besides being a really nice guy.
Right.
He's not a, outright horrible rebel the way a lot of these people are,
Extremely nice, personable, knowledgeable, but at the same time, very passionate. So,
yeah.
Yeah, that's the keys as far as I'm concerned with Roger. So you and your husband actually work on the Liberty Beacon then?
Yeah, Marcel is the director of print media, which was my job before I became the executive director. So he's in charge of basically the articles and getting them up, reposting. He does a lot of reposting of articles all over Facebook. And he makes a lot of great connections with people. He finds people and then connects them with TLB. So he's done quite a bit of that, which is very valuable. So we work together. He helps me to write articles and find articles. And so it's a great working relationship.
So another question for you, because I got to tell you, I really like the sort of intensity of the falling darkness. Who is really responsible for that character of that particular website?
Oh, the zine.
Mm-hmm.
He manages that website. He's an excellent writer, and he puts all those articles up, and he writes them and finds the rest of them. They're amazing.
So, and people can find that at thefallingdarkness.com, right?
Right.
Right. And really it's a little more edgy than some of the Liberty Beacon stuff, but I'll tell you, the Liberty Beacon stuff is edgy enough. But if you're especially angry though, or if you have a particular proclivity toward the more intense, I would say check out the Falling Darkness as well, because I often plug the Liberty Beacon, but sometimes forget to mention that one.
I know. Sometimes I have a hard time deciding where an article should go, actually, because it's a degree of intensity. Sometimes I put them in both.
Yeah, that's true. Some of them do belong in both as well.
Yeah.
So, look, your interest in psychotropic drugs, this pharmaceutical complex, and I hate to keep doing this, but, an industrial complex is an industrial complex.
Yeah.
Big Pharma is definitely the pharmaceutical industrial complex as far as I'm concerned, because, they've added plenty of chemicals to food, to water, and now medicating by decree and by change in diagnosis and increasing the spread of this stuff to younger and younger people. And, we're now in an age where it seems as though, you can't be in a room with 5 people unless, 2 or 3 of them at the very minimum are medicated.
Oh, I know.
So, what do you have to say about that in particular?
Well, I believe that psychiatrists are the scourge of the planet. I really believe that. They've been around for a long, long time in different ways. And, they create a lot of damage to people, and that's their whole intent, because if you can make people docile as well as sterile, you can control the planet, can reduce the population, and control the rest of us. And that really is their whole intent. And the thing behind them is basically fear. They're afraid of us. And that's why they do the things they do. Because they honestly believe that the whole world is out to get them. I won't say this about all psychiatrists, because some of them are very well-meaning, but the basic intent is that they're terrified.
Right. The overall sort of, auspices behind psychiatry is very destructive, it seems. It is mind control, and again, I hate to use a buzzword, but, mind control, if the shoe fits, people, I mean, what am I going to do? But here's the thing. You also bring up the point about sterilization and changing the breeding habits and socialization. It is creating an unnatural state. And again, we'll qualify this by saying that there are probably some people who do get into, the field of psychiatry or psychology with the intent of curing ills. They probably do. I'm not going to say that I can state emphatically that every psychiatrist has evil intent for mankind,
no.
But unfortunately, the industry of psychiatry and the industry of psychopharmacology has become just that. I mean, sterilization is something that I wanted somebody to come on and talk to me about, because I mean I observe it in the in the use of bisphenol A and stuff like this. And various other chemicals which have reduced the male gender's ability to procreate, and stuff like they put in the corn and everything else. And I'm looking at it and saying to myself, in order to do this to society, to sort of chemically castrate the males in society, how can you view this in any other way other than malicious? So,
yeah.
I don't know what you have to say about that. I mean, we've gotten a little bit off of psychology or psychiatry here, but in reality, it is a big part of psychiatry and psychology to alter the way that the genders behave in a natural sense, right?
Yes, that's what the drugs do, and also, as Roger says, it's all related. There's GMO foods, and besides the drugs, the corn. You've heard stories about a farmer who had he gave his pigs some GMO corn feed, and they became sterile. And then he stopped giving them that, and he gave them organic feed, and they had babies again. So all of this is related, but on psychiatric drugs, their whole intent is to kill people. Because that's what they do.
Right, and either directly, we're seeing increases in all of these, brain diseases of all sorts. But on top of that, the drugging of younger and younger people, right. They're altering their brain chemistries before they're even fully formed. And this to me is one of the most insidious things, because it's like guaranteeing brain damage, from the time that a child can just about walk.
Or even before that, you've heard of the Mothers Act, giving psychiatric drugs to pregnant women. Killing for two for the price of one.
Well, right, because I mean they're both sharing in that cocktail of sorts.
And the child is born with problems, with brain defects, brain damage from the mother taking these drugs, which are extremely powerful, even for the mother. But can you imagine what it does to an unborn child?
Well, yeah, right, and the lack of a blood-brain barrier and all that in the the fetus, let's just call it the fetus for now, means that it can't even defend itself in a natural sense from all these poisons. Right. And it is extremely insidious, and I'm almost speechless that they continue to change this stuff, because it was only maybe 20 or 30 years ago that this kind of stuff wasn't even allowed. They would caution you not to even allow children to handle these kinds of medications that are now being dumped down their throats wholesale, right?
Exactly, and in many cases, children are given these drugs in school without the parents' consent. A lot of times, parents don't even know that children are being medicated. I don't have specific places, but I know I've read that. So it's getting very insidious and very dangerous.
Oh, right. And, parental consent is another issue, too, because, after all, parental consent is now no longer the sole responsibility of the parents as it stands, because, the state constantly intervenes and involves itself in the, raising of children now, to the point where, if you punish your children too harshly or anything like this, they'll intervene, they'll take your children away, they'll do all these different things. So now, sort of by decree, if you don't drug your children the way that the doctors say you're supposed to drug your children, you can also have these child services called on you and all this kind of stuff.
And it's happened. It's happened.
Yeah.
There's a case recently where a woman, she went to court, she had to fight for a long time to get her daughter back because she was taken away from her because she refused to give her drugs. So it's true, the child doesn't belong to parents, less and less. They're wards of the state. That is what's happening.
Yeah, and I mean, again, if you can, and I've said this before about a couple other subjects, but, the truth is, if you trust, the people that are in charge and can't seem to figure out a way to, deliver a proper school lunch to your children to raise them, okay, fine. If you trust those very same people to have the power of life and death and to make medical decisions like this, not even really fully comprehending what the long-term effects would be, I mean, it's just about as insane as it gets. Wouldn't you agree, Lucille?
Yeah, well, let me tell you, there is no test for mental illness. A psychiatrist will tell you that there is no test at all to judge if someone is mentally ill. So it's just their opinion. But they have meetings, psychiatrists, where they all sit around and just give their opinion about what this particular drug will do or can do. So it's not based on any test whatsoever.
And I've even seen for myself where they essentially say, we're going to try this one, we're going to try that one, and regardless of how long the drug has been around, it doesn't matter, because here's the thing. Every time you introduce one of these, psychotropic drugs, you introduce one of these mind or mood-altering drugs into someone's system and create what they call a therapeutic level, which means that it becomes a constant in one's system up to a certain degree. Every time they do this, they really don't know what the entirety of the effects are. It's not a simple process of, well, this particular chemical does this particular thing, and therefore, it's not like that. I mean, if you notice, there are drugs for depression, where the warning labels even state, and then, the warning labels, trust them or not all you want, but sometimes the warning labels on antidepressant drugs say they cause depression.
I know, is that ridiculous or what? It's insane.
Oh, exactly. I mean, it's sort of like saying, well, look, I'm going to give you a pill which will prevent you from having a heart attack, but it may cause a heart attack.
Exactly.
How many of us would really voluntarily take that? I've never understood this about, like I said, psychopharmacology, which is what I call it, because it is the collaboration between, psychological theory and the use of pharmaceuticals. But the problem is, again, that these things are so strange as to never really... It's almost like they keep having to add on the side effects or the effects of these drugs, like in their descriptions, because it's unending what they keep discovering as they keep testing this on the population.
Mm-hmm. Right.
There are
more side effects, more illnesses. It's pretty grim. Yeah. They need to be taken out. They need to be exposed more and more. And that's what my goal in the Liberty Beacon is about. One of my major goals is to take out psychiatry, because they're causing a tremendous amount of damage.
Well, what articles have you had related to that recently? I mean, I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, and I didn't really give you any warning for stuff like this, but do you have any articles you could point people to about it?
About psychiatry?
Yeah.
You mean my own or other issues or?
Well, ones that, that comport with what it is you're talking about here, or that are on the Liberty Beacon site, or on the Falling Darkness site, or anything like that. I mean, just a couple of them you could name maybe that people could find.
Well, there's one that I wrote, Psychiatry. I don't remember the titles, but if you just put in psychiatry, you'll get a bunch of articles written on psychiatry. And then there's Citizens Commission on Human Rights, which has been fighting psychiatry for over 20 years. And they actually shut down psych hospitals and psychiatrists. It's totally exposed them. So I published a few of their articles as well on Liberty Beacon.
Right. I mean, and this is another factor that I think it bears examination as well, is the sort of de facto imprisonment of individuals under the guise of these psychological illnesses, which as you've just basically explained, are a matter of the doctor's point of view. In reality, because I mean, you can take 2-3 psychiatrists, send them to go examine the same patient, and they may come up with very different conclusions, because if you wanted to point to any particular, I shudder to call it a science, but if you wanted to point to something that is scientific in nature and say this is probably where they came up with the phrase "not an exact science," psychiatry is definitely one of those things.
No, yeah, it's not a science at all. It's all opinion. And it's not based on any understanding of the mind, really. And people, when they tend not to understand something, they might destroy it. There's a tendency to do that because there's frustration involved in not understanding something. But the motivation is there to suppress in the majority of psychiatrists, I would say.
Well, doctors in general will protect their own. You'll find it very, very difficult if you say have a surgeon who makes a clear mistake, in a surgery, let's just say, meaning well, but made a serious mistake. A lot of times you have a very hard time finding another surgeon to attest to the fact that was a serious mistake on that surgeon's part.
Right.
So there is sort of I call it the thin white line with these guys, because I think of the white coats, but it's like the thin white line instead of the thin blue line with these guys, because they protect each other.
Right.
And they also alter their standards for diagnosis very often in order to sort of accommodate their new beliefs as they evolve. It seems somebody who may have been called a schizophrenic or whatever, I'm using that as just an example, but somebody who may have been called a schizophrenic 10 years ago may now be called a borderline personality or something else. I mean, they literally shift the terms and conditions for each of these so-called illnesses in order to accommodate, new cases that crop up and everything else. And I say again that, when it comes to the workings of the human mind or the brain, we are all so very diverse, and I think the understanding of the brain in reality is so limited that these guys don't even know the stuff that they're really tampering with here.
Yeah, they don't. They don't understand the mind, and they just have a pill that they'll give you, or 2 or 3 or 4. That's their solution. Keep you quiet, and you won't be any trouble.
Yeah, and go ahead.
It's gotten to be, if you blink, then you must have some kind of mental illness. It's really insane. And the categories of mental illness just grows and grows. A child, plays a little bit too much or whatever, or is a little feisty in the classroom. He could easily be given a psychiatric drug. You know, that is what's happening.
That's the way that I see the evolution of the whole problem. I gotta say, and like I said before, it's also just to me very irresponsible. I mean, a lot of people complain about allopathic medicine in general, and how it's very unnatural and et cetera, but leaving that aside, let's just say that allopathic medicine is benign or altruistic in its nature. It doesn't necessarily follow, though, that these guys are doing, the good works, as it were, because, like you're saying, I mean, there's no real standard at this point. There just seems to be, like, a lot of guesswork going into this stuff.
Yeah, it's opinion and guesswork, that's right, because they don't know. Yeah. And it startles me that so many people are affected by this. They believe they're doctors, and they need to be educated. People really need to know what is happening, why these drugs are so dangerous. Especially in the military, which I am just totally very upset about. That, these guys go to war to protect us and come home and they get treated like trash. Just given one psych drug after another. And a lot of them die, commit suicide. And that's their treatment. Yeah,
I mean, if you examine just the most recent sort of rash of shootings and violence and the very quietly kept secret that there's, this uptick in suicides from returning military veterans and things, that's easy to see. But also very frightening, and again, another revolting sort of thing that's going on in our society at this point. I don't actually understand why more people aren't up in arms about, the VA hospital situation and the very poor lack of treatment for these guys that are being expected to go and do a job that, that quite honestly is not something that, that most of us are going to be willing to do. We're putting them in harm's way and then not removing them from harm's way when they come home, it seems.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't know why exactly there's such a scandal there, why they're so mistreated, but it is happening, and it needs to be corrected. It needs to be exposed. That's the only way that I know how to correct this, is to continually expose the crimes, because eventually they will cave in.
Yeah, I mean, and it is certainly criminal. If anybody wants to join us, by the way, in this conversation, you're free to do so. If you want to ask some questions or just, chime in on the conversation a little bit, you can. I'll take calls on the regular UCY line, 718-717-8296. If you want to jump in with me on Skype, just send me a message unless you're already on my contacts list, and I'll just add you into the call, anytime.
That would be good.
But back to what I was saying, I just wanted to make that general sort of announcement for everybody in case they wanted to. The drug culture in general, okay?
Uh-huh.
I'm going to take this into a little bit of a different direction because, excuse me, I think that there's an interconnected part of this that's often ignored, and I'm not saying you ignored it, but it's just one of those things that I always feel obligated to bring in, and that is that, the drug culture that has, risen up in this country, in this world at this point, with the way we're interacting with, with the opium farmers in certain parts of the world, and all of these other individuals who are creating illicit drugs and things like this. It seems to me as though, even if whatever your viewpoint is on marijuana, which to me it doesn't seem very harmful, but that's my opinion. Whatever your viewpoint is on the other illicit drugs, it seems to me as though the stuff that's being manufactured by these large companies is a hell of a lot more dangerous than any of the stuff that you could possibly cultivate from a plant. And that does include, in my mind, even opium and cocaine at this point, because, I mean, how is it that their drugs are any better? It feels to me almost like, look, it's okay if you poison yourself so long as you're utilizing the government-sanctioned poisons.
Right.
Do you have anything you want to add to that?
Well, I don't have quite the same opinion about marijuana. It's not terribly harmful, but I don't believe it's very good for you. It tends to kill brain cells and makes people apathetic, and puts you out of present time. So that's my opinion on it. But as you say, it's not nearly as harmful as other drugs. So I'm not on any warpath against it, but that is my opinion of it.
Well, yeah, I mean, and if you want to take it a step further, I mean, look, alcohol is readily available, legal, taxable,
Right.
Plenty acceptable society, in society, societal acceptance is there for alcohol in general. I mean, it's a sociable drug. There are entire industries devoted to it, and it's fine, and it is a drug. But to me, it's just as destructive as any of this other stuff that's being manufactured in mass. And meanwhile, it's perfectly legitimate and legal. So, again, I don't get it,
Yeah, I had some data on, like Rockefeller was trying to take over the oil industry, and hemp was, he didn't want people to have hemp so that's why he had marijuana banned, because it's related to hemp. And hemp is a very powerful, you can make anything with hemp. And, so he didn't want that. So that's basically why marijuana was banned. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I understand. I mean, hemp is not just the smokable plant. A lot of people forget that. There's tons of uses for it. Medicinal, textile, there's, the amount of use for it is, I'm not even well educated enough on the subject to really go into all of it, but I mean, ropes, clothes, you can make shoes, you can make a plastic-like substance out of it that's a whole lot more biodegradable than the petroleum-based crap that we use now.
You can make a car out of it. You've seen hemp cars? They're indestructible.
Yeah, I've heard about them. Never seen one myself. I mean, I've seen like I say, though, I've seen rugs and shirts and clothing made out of them and everything else. I just don't understand it. And then the medicinal purposes at this point, I'm learning more about that as we go. But I mean, it just seems endless to me, the positive nature of the plant, when it comes to hemp. But again, it's one of those things that's pushed aside because.
Because it helps people, basically. A lot of things that are good and helpful. There's a certain percentage of people in the world that don't want others to be happy and powerful in any way, because, as I said before, they think they're going to be harmed. It's a very irrational think, and so anything that helps people has to be destroyed because they feel that protects them.
Yeah, I mean, there's the financial interest, and then there's the social programming interest to it and all that, and I understand that.
Right.
But, the bottom line, though, I think you're right, and when you really pare it all down, it just seems as though, positive things that we could grow ourselves are a big problem for those that want to keep shoveling the garbage at us.
Right.
So that's the essence of the problem on a lot of these levels. I mean, and again, whether we're talking about hemp or the GMO foods or, all that kind of stuff, or punishing people for organic gardening and all this other stuff that they're doing.
That is alive, isn't it? People are being banned from growing food in their own backyard.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, when you think about it, what could possibly be the motivation for that? What danger is there to anyone else to grow your own food?
Well, right. And I mean, some of them make the claim that it's the, based on the rules of the town or appearances and all this kind of stuff. And I understand if you live in a community where you have a sense of shared rules and things like that, where you don't want to have gardens sprouting up on small plots of land. You know what? If that's the case and you want to grow your garden, you need to find someplace else to live. But in the cases where, people own their own property and everything else and they're being denied that right, it's very strange.
It's horrible. I mean, personally, I've never seen anything more beautiful than a vegetable garden.
No, I agree with you. I actually like it better than flowers because, there's some flowers you can eat, but I prefer to look at something that appears appetizing. I mean, whether it's tomatoes or it's, squash or whatever else being grown in a garden, I'm happy to see that more than I am flowers, personally. Some people might disagree.
No, I don't disagree at all. I'm growing my own vegetables right now.
Oh, really? What kind of vegetables do you grow personally?
Well, I bought containers of organic seeds, heirloom seeds, corn and pepper and potatoes and broccoli and squash and a whole bunch of things. I have them in little containers right now, and they're growing, and it's so exciting. I can't believe it. I water them every day, and I'm starting to transplant them into bigger pots. It's incredible. I mean, it's life, It's life itself. So, which is what I believe people are getting back to more and more, which is very positive. More and more people are growing their own food and just going against the grain of what's happening with GMO and Monsanto, and that is the positive side of it, which I like to look at, because we can look at a lot of bad things that are going on all the time, which is fine. We should be aware and alert to what is happening, but at the same time, we need to create or outcreate the suppression that's going on. Grow your own food. Find a community where people agree to protest the government and corporations and whatever. That is the positive side of it.
Right. And did you happen to follow any of the March on Monsanto this weekend?
Yeah, I looked at quite a bit of them. I don't know the statistics on it. Do you know anything? What happened? Basically, how many people showed up?
Well, no, it seems as though, a lot of people showed up in different places, but it was mostly individuals photographing themselves in different spots and, making a statement, in an interesting way on social media and stuff like that. There's a guy on our network that participates in it heavily. His name is Nick Burnaby. He's definitely, much more knowledgeable and into that than I am. But I was just curious, since we were talking about organic gardening and stuff like that, if you had, had any insights or been aware of that.
No, only what I saw on Facebook. I didn't get to go myself. I think there was a group in Nashville that I didn't get to go, but I'm very interested in that. Because I think that they're going down. Little by little, there are towns or communities that have totally banned Monsanto. There was one, I can't think of it right now, but they just banned them. Oh, it was in Oregon. Yeah.
I definitely hope that it's an increasing trend. I'll say that for it. I have another curiosity too, and I'm sorry if I'm firing questions at you, too quickly or whatever. But it's the way I talk and the way I do this, and hopefully you'll come on again and we'll do some more of this. But I just, I'm trying to get, since the audience has never heard you before, I want them to get to know you a little bit, and and then the next time when we're focused on something else, they won't call up and ask a question like this or anything, But, about the Earthship solution in Colorado, because I know you're aware of that. Are you looking to participate in that as well? Are you going to wind up going and learning or participating in another way, or what?
Well, I actually haven't decided. We're not in a position to move anywhere right now, but I certainly support it. I think it's fabulous that they'll be able to do that and to grow hemp and build a real community. I'm very much in favor of that. Yeah, so at some point we'll look at it, but I'm very supportive of it.
Yeah, so am I. I mean, I have a few concerns that can't get me there right away because I'm actually awaiting the birth of a child, so therefore I'm not quite ready to go there and do that right now. And besides, they're not quite ready to start accommodating, myself and my little units there. So,
yeah, it's a little bit too strenuous for us. We're not young, so I'm not out to hoe the fields and dig ditches and build houses. I'm not in a position to do that. But like I said, I do support it.
No, I support the idea for certain, and I definitely am happy that I'm able to keep bringing people, the news of how it's developing and all that, and I really look forward to continuing that.
Yeah.
So either way, do me a favor, since you are since you are the executive director over there, try and as things develop, keep me very much in the loop on that, so I can keep presenting these things. Because I love having Roger on. I could have him on every Tuesday, for the next 10 years. It would be fine by me. But
yeah, I know.
But I'd love to get some of the people that are also, actually getting their hands in the dirt first down there. Hear about how it comes to fruition, from its inception. Like I've heard about the ideas, and we've gone over the website and how people can donate, and that's earthshipsolutions.com, I think, all one word, right?
Yeah.
And so people can check that out for themselves and find many ways to participate in it. I know that there's sort of a brief application for involving yourself in it physically and things like that, so that they can evaluate, what your skill level is and what it is that you would be there to learn about, as well as contribute to the situation. And it is a learning facility, so that's an important thing to bring up as well.
It's a great part of it, because people will go there specifically for that, to learn how to farm and how to build houses, and then they can go off and do it in their own community or start their own community. I think it can easily snowball, changing the world quite a bit.
See, that's what I'm hoping, is that, if I create, a series on this, and people hear how it evolved, from step to step to step, they might actually pick up the idea and run with it as well. Of course, I'm going to hope that they're going to participate in the project directly, but even if they take the idea and run with it and create just as well a thought-out situation, and people do this, all over the place, gee, wouldn't that be interesting if we all of a sudden had, tons and tons of these communities everywhere independently living and, not only coexisting with each other as people, but also, being friendly to the environment and having all of their needs met in a natural way.
Exactly. People would be, living close to the earth and just totally avoiding Agenda 21, because their plan, is to just crowd everyone into these high-rise apartments and take over all the land themselves. So we would be doing quite the opposite. And that's what's needed.
Right, and coexistence with nature without completely ripping it apart and damaging it. That's the other really important thing. Plus, these skills, like I discussed with Roger, if somebody wanted to go out there and learn about solar power and just utilize, just that portion of what they could learn from there and take it back to their own communities, who knows what could spread from there. So I think that's a really great part of it as well.
Yes, that's vital. The whole community element of it is so important, because there's probably a lot of people out there all by themselves thinking, well, how would I do this, How could I possibly live off the grid or whatever? But if there were a group of people, what you could probably create is a group, or join this group, or join that group, or organize things like that, so that people can be part of a team somewhere,
Right, and in that way, we would do for small collective groups. We would do for ourselves instead of relying on the infrastructure that's crumbling all around us to supply us with all these other things.
Yeah, so, we have to create another world, which is what I believe. We are creating a whole other universe here. Because this one is crumbling and dying, and what are we going to do? We can't revive it. We can't change it. It's so corrupt that we just need to out-create it. And that's what I totally believe.
Yeah, and it would actually, if it spread like it is that we could envision it spreading, it would actually create a whole new infrastructure, all on its own, and it would be independent of, like I say, all these larger concerns that have for so long manipulated the situation. Yeah. So, we have only about, I would say 15 minutes left.
Uh-huh.
And I wanted to make sure that we get in everything that you want to make sure we mention. Obviously, I've already mentioned, the Falling Darkness and the Earthship Solutions. But you want to talk about the main website and what it's like, and have people direct people to it?
Oh, Liberty Beacon?
Mm-hmm.
Well, basically, I tell as many people as I can about it. I post articles all over. And join groups. I join other groups and just promote various articles. And that's what we do, basically. That's what Roger set up by joining. I think he's joined about 300 groups. And we continue to do the same thing and just spread the word. And we've gotten a lot of validation for the Liberty Beacon from people who feel that it's the best one online as far as what we do.
And that's at the libertybeacon.com, all one word, am I right?
Yeah, the Liberty Beacon. There's another Liberty Beacon, but it's different. It's not the same thing. So it's the Liberty Beacon.
Right, so you got to make sure you put the Liberty Beacon on there when you're looking for the site that Lucille is involved with. So.
Huh, right.
Right, and Roger too. Let's not forget Roger, because he's the. I forget if he says he's the founder or the co-founder, but either way, I do think of him as as one of the main voices, because he's the guy who tirelessly speaks about all of this stuff, and right. Has sought to bring people together under the banner of only one thing, and that is the concept of freedom. Which he has stated many times, and I'm just going to do this for him, and probably not as well as he does, but let me give it a shot. Here in the United States, we do not have a patent, nor do we have a copyright on freedom or tyranny. Both of these things are worldwide concepts, and both of these things are human concerns. So, everywhere in the world, there is a place for liberty to sprout. And that is just about all I can say about it. I think that's the main thrust of it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lucille.
No, that's absolutely it. That's the bottom line. It's what we're all after, and it's what we should all have. We're entitled to it. It's not a privilege given to us by the government or any other forces. It's inherent. Freedom is inherent.
Exactly, and there's often talk about inalienable or inalienable rights, depending on how you pronounce it. This does mean that these were endowed upon us at inception. This is not a matter of debate. This is something that simply should be, and it is something that, unfortunately, due to many, many different circumstances, and as Roger and I discussed earlier, partially through our own negligence throughout the generations, has gotten away from us as people, as individuals, and as groups. And I do believe also that the more that we stand together and unite our voices, our energies, and our strengths, the less likely it is that we shall all fall one at a time.
Right.
So, is there anything else that you'd like to add, Lucille?
Oh, sorry, phone rang.
No problem. I was just wondering if there was any sort of final thoughts you wanted to give my listeners before I kind of let you go and close out the show.
Well, I'm very happy that we did this. I was a little concerned about whether I'd have anything to say, but I think we did. We covered it quite a bit. And I'm very happy to work with the Liberty Beacon. I think it's very important. And your show is very important. And together, as you say, that's what we're going to do. We're going to get more and more people enlightened and united. And that is it. That is the only way.
Precisely.
Yes.
Well, thank you again, Lucille. And I always mispronounce your name. So you want to just give me your full name real quick so that they can figure out which articles you authored and all that? Because I'm terrible at pronunciation when it comes to names like this.
Okay. Yeah, it's Femine. Femine.
Right. Okay. I just always think of you as Lucille from the Liberty Beacon. And
that'll work.
I always loved the name Lucille because after all, that was B.B. King's guitar. So that's the way I think of it.
I've heard that song about, a couple of thousand times.
Oh yeah, that one too. The song Lucille. Yeah.
So there are 4 hungry children, a crop in the field, you know that one?
Yep.
And I had 4 kids, so.
There you go. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us tonight, Lucille, and I hope we can do this again. We'll create more of an agenda next time, but we'll definitely try this again, okay?
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it very much.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Yeah?
So that was Lucille. She's the executive director at the Liberty Beacon, as we said before. And, I'm real happy to have had more people on. Of course, we had Terry Joyce on before. I've had on Roger Landry several times. And, I enjoy these talks because it gives me a little affirmation for the things that I believe. So, I'm getting just about ready to get out of here, guys. And then you'll be dealing with what? Let's see real quick. I had it in front of me before, and now I don't. But isn't that what I always do? Have I tripped over my tongue 3 times yet, people? I think so. You'll get the continual condition after me, and then you'll get On the Brink with Jeff Wepperson. Of course, you'll have Primer Time. Stick around for the gun thing there, boys. And Prepper Chicks After Dark. And I think she's going to have author G. Michael. I always mess up the pronunciation of his last name too, but he's the guy who wrote those really cool books. And, the whole thing with the card game and all that. And I know that show's going to be good. So you guys might really want to stick around for Lori. I'm sure, anybody who's listening to me, probably, she's got, double, triple the listeners I do. So, she doesn't need me to prop her up any. But that's what's going to follow me tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. And I'm going to try, let's just see if it works. Since I didn't have others join me on the broadcast, I'm going to simply play you a track that I was trying to play the other day and didn't get to play here at the end. And probably I will see you next time on the Ochelli Effect on UCY.TV radio. And you guys enjoy.
Just like a poison, reality aborted without reason. Nothingness will. Not work, so it's correspondent. No doubt that someone should beat up destroying the enemy.
Working in the mood for murder.
Feed my obsession.
It's working in the mood for murder.
Excitement, fear, pleasure, all mixed together.
It's working in the mood for murder.
Not parents, not society, not pornography. I mean, those are just excuses.
It's working in the mood for murder.
The person to blame is sitting right across from you.
Huh. Alright. A little bit of strangeness there. I was trying to get something else to play and something else popped up. But, down to the last 2 minutes. So, I don't know where we're gonna go here. Can we make it play or not? It doesn't look like it. Oh, buddy. I was gonna play you these little news clips I put together real quick.
Webcam microphone up close. Webcam microphone up close.
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was a...
See, but I have the files. You know, I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, how can that be possible? The brain, you know, days and the fondle slab of choice, I don't know that much. Internet, professional around and not just Ventura style. It doesn't matter where the information comes from as long as it's real. It doesn't. It's hard to get real information because seriously, they don't want you to have 2 sources.